Welcome into the Illini Inquirer podcast. Jeremy Warner, Joey Wagner with you. And Joey Wagner, it is time. It is time for our position previews. We've seen 10 training camp practices. Well, maybe like combined, I don't know, 1.5 of them, but we've gotten to know a little bit more about this team as we've talked to a lot of players and a lot of coaches. And it is time to go through our position previews. Are you ready for this? We're going to kind of bundle them all up a little bit. But go 2 position groups at a time for maybe the next 2 weeks as we get everybody ready for the season opener against Toledo, which is 3 weeks from now.
I am ready. It is less typing than the position primers that we put out on late July. And we've learned a lot. Like, let's be honest, we've learned a lot since we put those primers out, despite not having the access that we would hope. We do have the conversations to go off of. So, yeah, man, I'm ready. It's getting closer.
Yeah, so today we're going to focus on quarterbacks. What a way to start this thing off. What everyone cares about and the most important position, and again, the most important position for Illinois in the 2023 season and one of the biggest questions in the 2023 season. And then we'll talk about running back, where Illinois has to replace an All-American in Chase Brown. But how we're going to separate this is we're going to start off talking a little bit about the biggest storyline of each position group, a big question. We'll kind of break down what we believe to be the depth chart at that position and then talk about reasonable expectations. But before we even get to the storyline, Joey, and this has something to do with it, but I think it's worthy to look back at last year and kind of look at, this is why this quarterback position is so important, because even though Illinois had Chase Brown, an All-American running back, and he was such a huge part of the offense, just having a middle-of-the-road passing offense, look how much better it makes your team. Illinois finished 6th in the Big Ten in pass efficiency with Tommy DeVito at quarterback, Barry Loney as the offensive coordinator. You look back, Joey, since 2015, their best in pass efficiency in the Big Ten was 10th. They were number 1 in the Big Ten in completion percentage at 69.6%. The best they'd been since 2015 was 11th at 54.9%. So I know the average yards per game, that was 9th. They weren't that explosive. They were 9th in yards per pass attempt. That's where they have to improve. But what a difference a good quarterback and a solid offense makes. And we saw it. Illinois does not go 8-5 or go 7-1 to start the season without much improved quarterback play and just a passing attack.
Yeah, I mean, look, Tommy DeVito's season last year at a lot of schools probably wouldn't register the way that it registers at Illinois, which is no knock on Tommy DeVito's season. It was a perfectly fine season, a really good season by Illinois standards. Illinois standards for quarterback play has just not been good. It's a position that, look, there's been a lot of reasons Illinois football hadn't been very good until Brett Bielema got there, but that's a big part of it. They have not found the quarterback recipe. Tommy DeVito came in, I think, gave that position juice, gave it life, made it an attractive candidate to go get a Luke Altmaier, to go get a John Paddock. And now you just got to build off of that. You've got to find those missing links that you had. Like you said, they weren't very explosive. That's something that they've talked a lot about, and maybe year 2 of Barry Loney's system helped get them there. A lot of fall on the wide receivers. But you're starting to see signs of life that this passing attack is, I don't want to say turned a corner, but it's obviously something that's improved greatly from Brett Bielema's first year to his second. Then at that point, you can go back quite a ways to find out when it was as good as what it was last year.
Yeah, we'll dive into this, but the difference for Illinois, the lack of big plays, was a huge hindrance to the offense. They were 94th in the country in plays of 20-plus yards, 89th in plays of 30-plus yards, 105th in plays of 40-plus yards, 120th in plays of 50-plus yards. Well, the story is, Joey, they have to do this all over again. They have to remake the quarterback room all over again because they could not get that 7th year of eligibility from the NCAA. The Big Ten approved another year for Tommy DeVito. The NCAA did not, and it didn't have a slam dunk case, but they tried it. Tommy was on board of returning, but now Tommy fighting for a spot for the New York Giants. A nice preseason game. But it's
winging at cameras exactly like we thought Tommy DeVito would.
That's right. Oh, man, I miss that. I miss that swagger. But they remake this quarterback room, and to be honest with you, it was a pretty good job. With one scholarship, they go get Luke Altmaier, a former 4-star prospect, who 24/7 Sports has as a top 10 transfer quarterback during the offseason, and John Paddock, who started 12 games at Ball State. And this all happened really, Joey, on the fly because they were very confident. I want to say very confident. They were pretty optimistic, cautiously optimistic that they could get Tommy DeVito back as late as early December. And then it fell apart. So they had a deep dive into the transfer portal. Hudson Card was near the top of their list. Luke Altmaier, they get one of their top 2 targets. Altmaier had some other good options as well. Didn't play a lot at Ole Miss, but Paddock did. So just remaking that room, I thought they did a pretty good job on the fly because there's another scenario, Joey, where this doesn't go as well. They don't get 2 options who you feel like can at least give you a chance.
Yeah, I remember the timeline was kind of they get Luke Altmaier and then Wisconsin did Wisconsin. I'm only bringing this up because it seems like they brought in 7 quarterbacks. And that's an exaggeration. And everyone thought, well, how can schools still bring in more than one quarterback? Because you just typically can't, right? It's the reason you don't have more times than not 2 quarterbacks in a high school recruiting class. There's not a market for that. There's too many other options. And I mean, it's a fair question, and Illinois threaded the needle by going to get John Paddock. Does it help that he's an Illinois legacy? Probably. But Ball State, I'm sure. I mean, I haven't talked to anyone at Ball State, but wouldn't you think you'd welcome back your 13-game starter if that was the case? So certainly he could have returned to be a max starter, and that's a pretty good position to be in. So they really did a nice job of, on the fly, like you said, reworking this, threading the needle. And this is the most significant quarterback room turnover that I feel pretty comfortable saying of Brett Bielema's tenure. Because year 1, you had Brandon Peters come back. Yes, you moved Isaiah Williams and added Art Sikowski, moved Drew Spann to wide receiver. We still had a returning starter. Then last year, you still had a returning backup in Art Sikowski, who was, however much you want to believe, competing for the starting job into training camp before Tommy DeVito was named the starter. And now you're talking, you lose your starter, you lose your backup, you lose your third string in Ryan Johnson. And this quarterback room's completely remade. I mean, the only scholarship guy left over, and I know we'll talk about him, Jeremy, is Donovan Leary. So this is the most fingerprints that Brett Bielema and this coaching staff have had on this quarterback room.
Yeah, the difference is, of course, and we'll dive into what we expect from these guys, but Altmaier started 1 game at Ole Miss last season. He took Jackson Dart into the season, which says something because Jackson Dart had a pretty good season for Ole Miss. He backed up Matt Corral, completed 28 of 54 passes for 317 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So he's far from a proven commodity, right? But he's got great pedigree. Ole Miss seemed to really like him in his approach. And then John Paddock, meanwhile, spent 4 years battling for the starting job at Ball State, was deep on the depth chart early. But last year wins the starting job, completes 60% of his passes, 2,719 yards, 18 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. Not the most impressive stat line, but a guy that has experience at this level. So it really felt like these guys, Joey, really complemented each other well. And like you said, Paddock, his grandfather, right, his uncle, both play at Illinois. So this place means something to him. And he just saw an opportunity that, hey, I can push Luke Altmaier, and if I don't win the job, I'm 1 snap away from playing at the Big Ten at the highest level. So, man, to have that, to bring in Paddock on top of Altmaier, I thought was really maybe fortunate for Illinois, but really a huge win for them to bring him in and to have him push Donovan Leary and have him push Luke Altmaier. I think John Paddock is a significant addition to this quarterback room.
Yeah, and you do it without using a scholarship of one of your 85. And as we know, Jeremy, as get into camp here, you need all 85 of those to put out the depth that you need, especially at some of those key positions. So it's a really good job by this staff. And again, not to keep harping on it, but I don't know that that's attractive if you're John Paddock or if you're Luke Altmaier, if Tommy DeVito doesn't have the year that he has, which, again, good year, but that doesn't move the needle at a lot of programs. It does at Illinois, and that could ultimately, down the road, if Luke Altmaier has success, if, whatever the case is after him, I mean, if you go back and say, well, they don't have that year in 22 where the passing attack looks reasonable, then maybe you don't get a Luke Altmaier. Like, there could be a domino effect. I don't know that it will because Barry Lunny's got his own history here, but a lot happened this offseason, I think, because of the success that was last season.
So my big question for quarterback would be, can this group match or be an upgrade over what Tommy DeVito provided? So I'll just throw that one to you, Joe, and ask you what your thoughts are. Can this group do what Tommy DeVito did or do better than what Tommy DeVito did last year?
In different ways, I think. Like Luke Altmaier might be able to help Illinois to more explosive plays. We've seen his arm. We saw a little bit, very, very limited today, Jeremy, of him throwing it around. We've heard he has a big arm. It shows on film. In that way,
we saw it in the spring too. We saw scrimmages in the spring.
In that way, yeah. But look, let's be honest. Like if this group matches Tommy DeVito, you're probably pretty happy. I think obviously you lose Chase Brown, you lose so many draft picks on the defense. You probably need this group to take a little bit of a step above what you had last year. Where I don't know that they can match is just the efficiency, the accuracy that was. Like Tommy DeVito was very, very good in those short and intermediate. He was very, very smart with the football. Didn't see a lot of turnovers out of him. And Luke Altmaier, who we assume is going to be the starter and would be floored if he wasn't, like he doesn't have that game experience. He has so many less reps than Tommy DeVito had at this point, but he's got talent. And I think the arm strength is one of those things that we're going to circle and say, if there's going to be a different feel, it's going to be his ability with the deep ball married with the wide receivers being in their second year with Barry Lunny and their continued development.
Yeah, you hit it there. The analogy I would use is Tommy DeVito is so good hitting singles and doubles. He is so good at that. I mean, his completion percentage on these short passes was fantastic. And Illinois had to kind of live there because I don't know. Well, Tommy wasn't great on deep balls, but he also just did not have the personnel to be great there. So I do think Luke Altmaier throws a better, more accurate deep ball. I think Luke Altmaier is a better athlete and probably going to be a better runner. It's an element that Illinois kind of lacked, especially late in the season after Tommy DeVito suffered an ankle injury that really, I think, hurt them in the red zone towards the end of the season. But Tommy was mobile, but Luke Altmaier is a better athlete. So I do think Altmaier can hit more triples and home runs. My question is, does he make as much contact singles and doubles? Is he accurate on those, screen passes and slant passes? I think he's got it in him. It's not as proven. The other thing is, can he avoid turnovers? Can he avoid the big mistakes? I think you're going to have a few more big mistakes. At the end of the day, can those big shots, those home runs, those plays with his feet, can they make up for the mistakes that probably are going to happen with growing pains? And the other thing is, are the players around him better enough? Does Pat Bryant take his game to another level? Is Malik Elzy and Alex Kapka-Jones better? Does Tip Ryman make better adjustments on the ball midair to where he gets that first down that Tommy DeVito threw well to him, but he just dropped? Isaiah Williams had drops last year, right? Like, can those guys be better in that connection to where it lifts up Luke Altmaier until he gets enough reps to not make as many mistakes? So I expect growing pains, but I do expect more big plays. So where's the balance? Does it all balance out at the end? It's going to look different though than I think Tommy DeVito. I think this offense can be more explosive, but maybe more mistake prone.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I do wonder the role of the running backs. I know we're going to get to this, Jeremy, but you need those guys to keep defenses honest and to be able, and we've seen Josh McCray have those runs. We've seen Reggie Love have flashes, but like those two things have to work in tandem as well. And look, let's be honest, it probably skewed a little bit at times last year to like 55 Chase Brown, 45 passing attack, right? So you probably need that to be a little more 50-50 or even maybe a 55-45 the other direction with your ability to pass, but you need them.
And it could be as easy as, does Luke Altmaier's legs make the difference in the red zone compared to what they were last year? Like, he might not be as good as Tommy DeVito, but if his legs help you in that red zone where he struggled so much, or he's just got better pass catchers in the red zone, which I think Elzy, Bryant, Kapka-Jones, Tip Ryman all could really help there. That could all play towards the occasion. So I think they are capable, but I can't sit here today and say, Joe, yeah, they'll definitely be better, because Tommy DeVito was good last year. And I think you're seeing, because he's getting a shot at the NFL, and I think a real shot at the NFL. Illinois hasn't had that in a while. Wes Lunt did not get this long of a look So it's been a while since Illinois has had a quarterback go in an NFL camp and stick around this long.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the way, and to maybe reiterate our point, like Illinois was up here for pass efficiency, completion percentage. Like I expect that to come down a few notches, and the turnovers are going to go up. But I also expect those yards per game, yards per attempt,
Yes,
to probably go up. So, like, where is the meeting ground there? Right? Is that meeting ground like collectively sixth or seventh in the Big Ten, or are you somewhere in that 4th through 6th range, which is probably a little high?
yeah.
But like those two things, that's what I'm fascinated is where that balances out.
Yeah. Does it look more like, I don't know. Does it look more like Nebraska's quarterbacks recently, or Talia Tagovailoa early in his career, where it's explosive but inconsistent? You know what I mean? Like DeVito felt more Sean Clifford like, right? Where it was like, know what you're going to get. It's going to be solid. You're going to have a really good chance. Is there enough accuracy down the field to be a big play threat? Maybe that's kind of the comparison there. I don't think Graham Mertz would be the comparison there, but yeah.
Florida starter Graham Mertz.
That's right. That's right. All right, breaking down the depth chart. QB1, Joey, go.
Luke Altmaier.
Yeah.
The only reason I held up with my brain was on Tommy DeVito. I was going to name Tommy a 7th-year starter here.
What? Breaking news. It's August 15th as we record this. Happy birthday, Debbie Warner, my mother, by the way. Yeah, I would be. When do you think this happens?
So Brett Bielema told us 2 weeks is kind of like when he likes to have his guys know. That would bring Saturday. I don't know if we're going to have a chance to talk to Brett Bielema on Saturday. They have a scrimmage on Friday. It is also just as likely this is a social media post at some point. QB1. Here's the thing. I think everybody in the building knows. Like if you listen to what these guys say, like actually listen. Yes, the coaches do someone says, what are you seeing out of Luke in this regard? Well, all of my quarterbacks. Yeah. That's great. I get it. It's to stay on in character. I guess that whole time is impressive. But if you listen to the guys,
Isaiah Williams.
Listen, man, they rave about Luke Altmaier. So I would expect sometime, today's the 15th. I don't see a scenario this gets past like the 21st. Do you? 21st, 22nd?
I would say within the next week. Whether that's Saturday, 2 weeks out, or it's next Wednesday when they turn to Toledo. Everyone in that building already knows probably who it is. But just to make it official so they know where they're going, like they should know the starters of the game by next Wednesday, I would imagine, like where they're going to be at safety, where they're going to do at all these other positions. They should probably know, barring injury for all those positions, like they should know who their right guard is going into next week, right? So I think quarterback will be the exact same. And I agree. Whether it's Bielema telling us at a press conference next Wednesday or them announcing on social media, I totally expect it to be Luke Altmaier. He's gotten every time he's the first guy up in drills. In the spring, we got to see more. There were more scrimmages. Got almost all of the first team reps. Don Valeri got some first team reps too, but you don't do that unless he's going to be the starter. And I do think they've had John Paddock push him. I don't think Luke Altmaier's been clean the entire time. I don't think any of these guys have, but you brought him in to be the starter. He came here to be the starter. He is the most talented, dynamic player. And we forgot to mention this. He's the long-term guy. He's 3 years of eligibility. That's what makes this different. Like, Brandon Peters, we did not expect to be here 3 years due to the pandemic, but they keep doing this transfer portal carousel. And hey, I have no problem with it because you get more talent that way at a place like Illinois. But to have a guy potentially here for 3 years, like he's your guy. You move forward with him. And you have John Paddock there in case something happens to Luke Altmaier, whether it be poor performance or an injury.
Yeah, I do want to say that I think the latest this quarterback conversation goes would be the 28th, which would be the Monday Brett Bielema does his pre-Toledo.
Yeah,
dude, I hope it doesn't. Come on, this doesn't need to go.
The intrigue.
Does not need to go into game week. Can we transition to the backup battle?
I was gonna say I think we're both more intrigued by the backup battle, but I think we know where that's starting to go.
And I think my opinion on that has shifted the more we've gotten in there to see even just simple who's snapping to who. Josh Cruz is snapping to Luke Altmaier, by the way. But then who's handing to Reggie Love and who's handing to Josh McCray, right? Because those two are 1A, 1B. So obviously Luke Altmaier is giving the ball to one of them. And recently what we've seen is John Paddock handing off to Josh McCray, which would indicate he's the backup. And I'll be honest, my opinion on that has changed. I think Illinois would have loved it if Donovan Leary won that backup job. There's still a little time left here, but I think it's probably trending towards John Paddock. Makes sense. It makes sense for an older guy. If something, I think that I really do think, and we heard Brett Bielema mention every time he talks about Art Sikowski, he brings up Penn State, he brings up Iowa, and he brings up, who's the third? Was it Minnesota? It was a third. I can't believe it. Was it Nebraska?
Nebraska's first year, right? Brandon got hurt.
That's right. 100%. Yes. He brings up those 3 games. And in my mind now, the more I think of it, I think you want experience there. And I think he saw that experience, composure, someone who's been kind of in the battle there, that matters when you're in a tough game, be it home or on the road. And I do find it interesting he's brought that up a few times. I know it means a lot to him that Art did that and has helped in Art's own story. But I keep coming back to that when we talk about the backup and then obviously what we've seen.
Yeah. John Paddock's played in front of 100,000 or 90,000 people at Tennessee. Now, Ball State got their butts kicked by a great Tennessee team, but he's been there. He's done that. It's not too big for him. And I think John Paddock is not going to go in there and try to be a hero. And not that I think Donovan Leary would try to, but I think there's a young guy thing where the first couple games for Illinois are not going to be easy. We've talked about this. And you made a great point, like a couple podcasts ago, where it's like Toledo ain't going to be easy. Kansas ain't going to be easy. Penn State ain't going to be easy. If you had FAU the first game and you blow them out, maybe you get Donovan Leary in there as your backup just to get him some reps, get him used to it if you feel like it's neck and neck. But I think if anything happens there, like John Paddock's the guy, because just you go in there and like Art Sikowski, just don't lose us the game. Just keep us in the game, make smart decisions, don't lose us the game, and make plays that are given to you. And I think John Paddock knows how to do that. I think John Paddock knows who he is. He's confident in who he is. He thinks he can make plays at this level, but I just think the known of John Paddock over Donovan Leary that makes sense. But if John happened to struggle and Luke Altmaier were out for a while, maybe Donovan Leary can take the job eventually. But they do feel good. And I think it's real when Brett Bielema says like they feel as good about their quarterback situation, especially 1 through 3, than they have since he's been here. Because Ryan Johnson was the backup, and I think he was solid. But I do think they think there's a different kind of ceiling with Donovan Leary, who just has the pedigree, has a really solid overall skill set. I don't know if there's one elite trait, but I do think they value Donovan Leary for the long term as the guy behind Luke Altmaier and potentially later in his career is a threat to be a starter.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up. Like, I hope no one hears this and thinks like, boy, this Leary kid's just not getting it. I mean, 1, he's a redshirt freshman. And 2, if in fact he is the third string guy, that would have mean you lost to Luke Altmaier, who obviously was going to start the second he committed, and John Paddock, who has 514 passing attempts to his 0. So, I mean, I just think that's important to say because I don't like they're high on Donovan Leary. They like what he's done. They like his development. I think there's just a matter of 514 passes and what that means in a season that I think there's a general understanding of the momentum you can continue to build with this season. And, if Donovan Leary would have win this thing out, this backup job out, then that's good for Illinois. Yes. I don't think there should be these flares of concern. Like a redshirt freshman's not winning the backup quarterback job. What? Like it takes time. It takes time. And he seems to be a kid who gets it. I mean, I think you and I leave every time we talk with him just really impressed by who he is and how he carries himself. And I talked to him briefly. Everyone's talked about his brother, right? Devin Leary was at NC State, now at Kentucky. So did you talk to him? Like, did you guys, not like ever, but like how often do you guys talk? They go, we talk pretty much every day. Yeah. That is good. That is a great thing.
Well, and to be honest, like just for us in our interactions and hearing from other people, like John Paddock is an alpha. Like he is a vocal dude.
Art Sikowski.
A lot like Art Sikowski. Donovan Leary is a really charming, forward, outgoing guy. Like you can see him commanding a huddle. I still got those questions about Luke. Like Luke's a little more quiet, a little more reserved. Now he's got the respect of his teammates, it seems like, but he's not as outwardly vocal. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. He's gotten more confident. Isaiah Williams told us the other day he's been more of a leader, but he builds relationships a little bit different. The other guys are more rah-rah. And this guy, Luke, is a little bit more just go about his business, follow me because I'm good, right? Like I'm good on the field. I got the swagger to me. It's not quite DeVito though, right? Like
No one is.
yeah,
He's a 1%er, man.
no one's quite DeVito. All right, Joey. Last thing as we wrap up quarterbacks and
Well,
switch.
can I just add, like, you know how you get people to follow you if you're a quarterback? Make passes, make plays, complete passes. I think you'll get behind someone who helps you win football games and make passes. And I think he's grown in all those other aspects too. I don't think this is like should have PTSD from the Brandon Peters conversation, which felt like a conversation that they had a lot.
I just feel like it is worth bringing up at that position.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
All right, reasonable expectations. What do you expect out of this group, Joey?
Exactly what we said earlier. Like if you can mirror last year in the ways that we talked about, understanding what might fall, what might go up, you need to be a middle of the road Big Ten. So there's God, how many teams are in the Big Ten right now as we speak? 14. That's going to change. Like you probably
day by day.
Yeah, I know. You probably would hope if you're Illinois, just given that you lost Chase, you fall in that 6 to 8 range. And just in totality of Big Ten rankings, I think that's fair. I think that's where they can be. I think year 2 and under Lunny, like I'm a little more. Maybe I just bought into the wide receivers being very, very excited about this, but I think there's probably more there. I understand all the hesitation, and that's more than fair. But I do think year 2 in Lunny's system, I think there's good wide receivers. Like some of this quarterback stuff that we had talked about in the past that wasn't very good, the receivers weren't very good either. I think the receivers are good. I think they can help Luke Altmaier. I think if you can fall 6 to 8 in the Big Ten in those rankings, that would be something that – it means Illinois had it should be having a pretty good season.
Yeah. I'm looking at Athlon's early season. They still have Peyton Thorne on here, so you can throw him out.
Poor Derek Piper. Hope he's not listening. He got duped on the radio when we co-hosted my old Athlon a couple weeks ago. It's tough stuff there.
Tanner Mordecai 5. He's got the production. I get it. I got questions about him. Cade McNamara 6. Get it. I think Luke Altmaier's got a higher ceiling, but I know what Cade McNamara is. Hudson Card. I like Hudson Card a lot. I would have him above Altmaier.
I just worry about around him, right?
Yes. Jeff Sims. This is where I think you're getting into the he's got way more experience, right?
Jeremy Warner versus Nebraska Cornhuskers continues. Oh my God.
Coaching is way better. Jeff Sims, I get why he'd be above him. Even Cali McManus. My boy Ryan Burns really high on him. But like he's number 10 on this list. Kevin Wimsatt at Rutgers. I'm not going to put any Rutgers quarterback. I know he's talented. I'm not putting any Rutgers quarterback above Illinois right now. If he could be 6 through 10, I think you'd feel pretty good about it. My thing is, you just got to limit the turnovers. Limit the turnovers. Stay healthy. Those are my 2 biggest things, because if Luke Altmaier does get hurt, it's a different season. But the season in a lot of ways goes as the quarterback goes. And I know we don't look at last year like it was because the defense was so good and Chase Brown was so good. But Tommy DeVito was such a huge reason why that team had success, especially through the first 8 games. So I think he'll be good. I don't know if he'll be great. I think the word will probably be inconsistent. I think it'll be inconsistent, but with flashes of, we haven't seen that in a while.
Yeah, I think the middle of October will be a heck of a lot different in the second week of September. He's going to be a guy who I think gets better as the season goes on. Because he's going to get reps. There's outside of John Paddock, there are 54 pass attempts in this quarterback room. It's just reps at this point. So that's why I think it's going to be a struggle. Kansas's defense will probably not be that great. So, maybe there's a chance there, but you're coming out of the gates pretty hot. Yeah. For Illinois. So that's going to be an interesting start.
And there's a lot of games on the schedule that's probably going to come down to quarterback play. Illinois, Purdue, Illinois, Minnesota, Illinois, Wisconsin, maybe Illinois, Maryland could come down. There's going to be a lot of close games on the schedule. So he's going to be under the microscope. But this is why he came to Illinois. Luke Altmaier came to Illinois for this opportunity. And it's a big year for Barry Lunny to develop those guys. I mean, I think we got to mention that. I thought he and Tommy DeVito, even though it was an arranged marriage, made for a really positive marriage in year one. Now we'll see what he can do with a far less proven guy, but with more experience. And I think a pretty decent supporting cast, Big Ten wise, with a couple key pieces from the offensive line returning, with what should be a good running game and a much improved group of wide receivers. Joey.
Yeah, I think all of that helps. And again, I've only been covering this since 18, so you've got a further evaluation of it than I do, Jeremy. But this is the best wide receiver group, I think, since I've covered this team. There's not a lot. It's the most talented. I think that's probably the better way to put it. It's the most talented.
Yeah, you can look back now. Geronimo Allison, Mike Dudek when healthy, and Malik Turner was pretty good. I mean, I covered A.J. Jenkins, was a damn good wideout. Regis Ben, that group back in the day was pretty good. But yeah, like this is definitely the best since the beginning of the Lovie Smith era, for sure.
Yeah, so that helps. And I think that's what Illinois, I mean, that goes hand in hand with not having very good quarterbacks. You're probably not going to have very good wide receiver production, and the same goes the other way. I think the offensive line helps a ton. Having a left side, your blind side protected by Julian Pearl at tackle, Isaiah Adams at guard, that goes a long way. Yep. And we think the right side will be fine. So, yeah, the supporting cast should help lift, presumably, Luke Altmaier.
All right, before we get to the running backs, I want to tell you about Home Field. They're a premium collegiate apparel brand based in Indianapolis. They emphasize their commitment to creating incredibly comfortable, officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. They feature a growing collection of over 150 colleges to choose from, including, of course, the University of Illinois. Home Field designs are super unique because they delve into the archives and the history of each school, using unique logos, mascots, and iconic moments to create thoughtfully designed apparel. They're all about authenticity and nostalgia, and you can see some of them coming up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. They have the Script Illinois. They have the Ringer tee with the orange. Our boy Brad Evans loves that one. They got the 2005 Illinois basketball logo and the Flying Illini shirt. I have one of those, and they are so comfortable. I'm telling you guys, give their site a look. It's not the typical Illinois gear you usually see. You can find them at homefieldapparel.com, where you can see their selection of colleges available. And guess what? Our listeners get 15% off their first order. Use discount code Illini23, excuse me. Our listeners get 15% off their first order with discount code Illini23. It's the perfect apparel to get you ready for the upcoming season. So check them out at homefieldapparel.com. All right, Joey, let's flip to the running backs. This is an interesting position as well because you have to replace an All-American running back. And that is the storyline, right? Can Illinois replace Chase Brown's production with a committee? And Chase Brown had one of the most fantastic years in Illinois history. Only Mikel Leshore and Rashard Mendenhall rushed for more yards in a single season. And Chase Brown was probably a healthy first half away from against Northwestern from setting that record. And now the approach is, listen, Josh McCray by himself, Reggie Love by himself, Jordan Anderson, Aiden Laufrey, Caden Fagan by themselves cannot replace Chase Brown's production, an all-time running back who's going to have a chance to play for the Cincinnati Bengals this year. But they're taking a different approach, and an approach I think they wanted to take last year, Joey, with Chase Brown and Josh McCray.
Yeah, that was, by my read, the goal, because one, that's how Brett Bielema has done things as a head coach, and he's had some, the committee thing. We should start with like the Brett Bielema's approach to a running back by committee. Isn't because he's got a lot of like passably talented running backs. That's just, it seems to be something he believes. He's done it with really, really good backs. You can go back to his Wisconsin time. I asked him about it just to buy in, and like some good backs splitting carries at Wisconsin. So yeah, we think because of that and because of how good Josh McCray was as a true freshman, that it was going to be a 1A, 1B. I think one, obviously Josh McCray's injury threw a wrench in that and really cost him the season. He played sparingly, but it just wasn't anything what anyone thought. And two, Chase Brown just kind of took the ball out of their hands a little bit because he was so stinking good at football. And like, even if you wanted a committee, was Reggie Love ready at that time? We saw him get some carries, but you just, there were games, Jeremy, and drives. You just couldn't take it out of the guy's hands. Like, it was Chase Brown was carrying this thing, and you just had to roll with it because it would work, and it worked at a really high level.
He did not play in the bowl game, and he still led Power 5 running backs in carries with 328, despite missing basically half a game with Northwestern, then going back in because he was sitting out the bowl game. Like, he would have broke the record if he would have played the bowl game. I don't blame him for not playing it. He carried 25 or more times in 7 games, 30 or more in 5 games. He had 4 straight games of 30 carries in the middle of the season. He had 41 carries against Minnesota, 36 against Indiana. Those are 2 of the top 10 single most rushing attempts in Illinois history, Joey, in the year of our Lord 2022. Like, that's when he did this. So that is rare. That is really, really rare. Like, the Big Ten was pretty rare last year with the carries these guys got, the workloads he and Mo Ibrahim had. But, like, we could talk about committee. Everybody does committees now. Like, Michigan has 2 of the best running backs in the country, and those guys each get a bunch of carries, right? In the NFL, it's hard to draft any running backs in fantasy football because who's going to get 20 plus carries a game? It's hard to find those guys. Like Bijan Robinson had 250 something carries last year for Texas. So it was great for Chase Brown's stat line, but in the end, was it good for him? Was it good for Illinois that he had to carry such a load? I don't think so. I think there were times he got tired late in games, late in drives. You didn't have Josh McCray to be able to come in there and finish it off with fresh legs. So I do think there's some positives of it than because you could stay fresh. You have more options. You have more looks for guys. He has more. Berlani has more options he can go to when he wants to get certain guys in. The negative is you don't have Chase Brown, who's one of the best running backs in college football.
That is quite the negative. Yeah, look, I think, and I don't know that this has ever been said, but I do think Barry Lunny got in his head in the red zone, and it's like Doak Walker Award back there, finalist, I should say.
Can we sneak him into the Heisman top 10? Yeah.
Yeah, so I do think there are benefits to having a committee approach. I think Josh McCray and Reggie Love, who we'll get to a little bit more in depth, but those are clearly the top 2 options. Brett Bielema has said as much. They're just different enough, right? Like they're just, this isn't like Aiden Lawfrey or Josh McCray where you've got like one really, really fast guy and one really, really big guy. There's a few similarities between them, but they're different enough to work effectively, which helps. And then we think there's should be a window for a third back somewhere. We'll also get to that. But I mean, come on, man. Like if Chase Brown walked into Brett Bielema's office last December and was like, let's run it back. Let's sign up another one. Nobody's saying no. I know nobody in the world is going to say no to that.
They tried. They tried.
They tried.
They had the already, yeah.
But we'll see. That's the biggest question, because if you noticed, and I'm glad you phrased it as you did, Brett Bielema's been asked, rightfully so, how do you replace Chase Brown? And you don't, but you try to replace his production. And that's just north of 1,600 yards, which I think that's the area to circle, I guess, right? Is that neighborhood of yards.
Yeah. And I bring this stat up because even I did like a double take when I looked at it, Joey, of Illinois was middle of the pack in rushing off, which is kind of crazy given that it was what they relied on. But when you just look at Big Ten, they were number 7 in the Big Ten in rushing yards per game in the country. I'm looking this up now. I should have been prepared for this, but they were something like 50 something in the country in rushing yards per game. So that's good. It was a strength of theirs, but it's not like these are ridiculous numbers. Like Rod Smith put up similar numbers the year before with Josh McCray and Chase Brown. They put up similar numbers. So I don't think it's a ridiculous output in totality for a team that should have a strong offensive line, especially we think run blocking wise, to repeat. So yeah, I do think they can replace Chase Brown's production. It's not going to be one guy doing it all. So the other thing that just gives you confidence is Brett Bielema. He's done this many times. He's
this exact approach, right? With this exact committee approach.
He's replaced Monte Ball. He's replaced John Clay. He gets James White. He gets Melvin Gordon. Now, he didn't coach Melvin Gordon on his best years, but he helped recruit him there. So, yeah, Illinois 55th in the country in rushing yards per game last year.
Does not seem real.
Yeah, 167.3. All right, my big question was, how good are Reggie Love and Josh McCray? What do you think, Joe?
I am pretty high still on Josh McCray. I that freshman season, you don't have a full summer. Like you don't have the spring, the summer, that whole like yearly cycle with just a college football life. And remember, there was a point in his freshman season where he had as close to 600 yards, wasn't it? It was over five. He was like sick and he was out a little bit. But you don't go and do what you did at Penn State. You don't go and put up some of those numbers if you're not good. Is he as explosive as Chase Brown? Probably not. But he's a good running back. And I think Reggie Love showed us, like, he was a good running back in high school, Reggie Love. He was a good recruiting win for Illinois.
Really good recruit win.
And I think he showed us flashes last year. I thought he was kind of tenacious as a runner. There were times you thought he was down and should have been down, and he wasn't. So I like Reggie Love more as a committee back, I think, than like if you were to try to say, go be Chase Brown.
Yeah.
Reggie Love, which isn't fair really to anybody, not just Reggie Love. But I think they're fine. Are they the two of the top like 15 backs in the Big Ten? I don't know, man. I think they're good enough to do in a Brett Bielema system and a Barry Lunny system. I think they're good enough to replace the production of Chase Brown with some help from pick a third back.
Yeah. I talked to a scout was at practice the other day, and I asked him, and he said, McCray looks good. He said, I envision him as a bowling ball, but he's lean and exhibited some juice. He's going to be fun to watch. Brett Bielema personally is really high on Josh McCray. It's all about just that mental capacity. Like when you come back from injury, everyone talks about the mental is harder than the physical to come back from. Josh McCray, when he came back from injury last year, he was not mentally ready for it. Like there was just, you don't have confidence yet. You don't have that build up to that game. But talent wise, Brett Bielema told us, like, he reminds him of John Clay. John Clay was the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year 1 year. I can see Josh McCray being a bell cow back. He showed us he's got the capability of being a bell cow back. It's not the same as Chase Brown. It's very different than Chase Brown, but he's in really good shape. And from what I heard, he looks really good during training camp. Reggie Love, like, I got to bring up, Thad Ward is now the running backs coach, right? And Corey Patterson did a really good job. You can't argue with the results. Thad Ward had success developing Kendrick Foster and Reggie Corbin. And Reggie Corbin is having a nice pro career in the USFL, right? Like, but there's nothing against those guys. Reggie Love is more talented than those guys. Reggie Love was a top 500 recruit out of high school. Wisconsin was really pushing for him to commit back in the day. He had offers from Tennessee, Nebraska, Notre Dame, Penn State, Iowa, and not all those schools are pushing at that time. But this is a talented guy that is kind of set back by injuries. But otherwise, he's got burst. He's got some power. He's got some wiggle. Like one of my favorite things, he's a really good one-cut running back. So he reminds me a little bit, maybe more physical, of Mike Epstein, who was a really good overall back, just wasn't able to stay healthy. But I thought Mike Epstein could have had a heck of a career if he did. Reggie Love is hungry too. Like this is his opportunity. You saw last year when he got the opportunity, he made the most of it towards the end of the season. And the one thing he has from the staff is trust. They trust him to make the right plays because he's a good blocker. He's good in the pass game. He's a good in between the tackles guy, can bounce it out. I think the thing for him was patience, vision. Chase Brown had to learn those things. I think that comes with reps. I think there's a really good tandem. I don't know if it's a top 5 Big Ten tandem, but under Brett Bielema, I think this group is going to be productive. I think they're talented, and then we'll talk about some of the guys beyond them. I think there's some depth here. So I do think we shouldn't underrate the talent of these guys because Chase Brown, phenomenal. These guys are pretty talented backs too.
Yeah, they are. And the system. I don't think you should go into a Brett Bielema coach team thinking the running game is not going to be at least middle of the road in the Big Ten. I think there's too much work, of a body of work to think otherwise.
And the other thing I think we should bring up, like Brett Bielema and Barry Lunny, unprovoked, like say they're not worried about the running backs. they've kind of
there's not been a lot there, right?
Like, yeah, we're not worried about it. Like the running game's been consistent. Like those guys are, and it's like, okay, that's what those guys want. They seem to have confidence, and let's be honest, they have some cachet when it comes to that, some credibility when it comes to that. All right, the depth chart, Joey, sort out the competition. How do you expect the carries to be split between Love and McCray?
50-50 is boring, right? That's a boring approach.
I think it'll change game to game potentially. But I do think if we're talking carries on the team, I think one of these guys, I would probably side a little bit more towards McCray long term here. Gets like 200 carries. The other guy gets like 150.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you've probably got a 50 to 70 roughly combined behind them. However, that maybe not even that much, maybe 30 to 50. Yeah, I think 200 and 150 sounds right to me. I'm with you. I do lean
175 and 125, whatever that looks like.
I do lean towards McCray probably being the one at the higher number, but I think it's going to be a very, very small gap. I too showed up to the party unprepared. What was the gap? The gap last year was ridiculous. It was silly.
I think Reggie Love had like 67 carries.
It will not be that again.
No.
Yeah, so I think somewhere in that 175, 125.
Because taking out the quarterback, there's probably 400 to 450 rush attempts, right?
Yeah, which is why my intrigue is the rest. Like that's where, like, yes. We talk about the intrigue with the backup quarterback. My intrigue for the running back is the third. And how often is the third or potentially a fourth utilized?
All right, plant your flag. Who gets the third most carries outside of Altmaier? Because Altmaier will probably be that guy. Who gets the third most carries out of this running back group?
My brain wants to tell me Aiden Lawfrey because he's so different and he's so fast. And there's a role for – he can pass catch too, so I think that probably gives you a little more versatility. He just hasn't been healthy. And
he is now.
He is now. But, like, there's a history there, right, where he hasn't been. So because of his skill set, I would probably lean towards him. Remember, Jimmy, we thought he was the guy as a freshman who could come in because of that exact skill set, and he's talented. And he's not like he's a twig fast either. Like, he's he's kind of a bulked up dude.
They don't let him out of GCMS as twigs, okay? They got like a college strength program there.
Somewhere Mike Allen, I hope, is nodding. Yeah, man. But I do like Jordan Anderson. I do. I think he's
like Caden Fagan as much as he's talking about him.
Yeah, we should discuss that because Caden Fagan has been brought up a few times by the head coach. I'm going to lean towards Aiden Lawford. I think he's different enough, but I don't feel that confident in doing that.
I would agree with you because he just brings something different. That speed element. Josh McCray is a big back, a bully back, but Jordan Anderson's so big. And I thought his spring was good. I thought his spring was really good.
He's got a lot more wiggle too, dude. Like he is not just a bowling ball. He has got some wiggle. He can catch the ball. That's a tough question, man.
Yeah, and just throwing Caden Fagan into a Big Ten game right away. Like, it's the same thing with, like, Jordan Anderson last year. I just don't think it was fair to be able to play him in some of these games. Now, looking back at it, you probably wish you would have played him in Northwestern and gotten some of Chase Brown's reps late in that game, but you were going for the record with Chase. But that was the opportunity, I thought, to really get Jordan Anderson's feet wet and see what you got there. He's a load. He's a really good pass catcher. And that's one thing about this group that, Chase was a pretty good pass catcher. This group's got some pass catching ability to it. Josh McCray included. Like, Josh McCray, his high school film was really good. He had a couple long catches his freshman year. I think this group's versatile. And I think Barry Illini will use that or should use that a little bit more. I'll be different. I'll go Jordan Anderson just because I really like this spring. But I've had some pause there just because we've seen Brett Bielema talk up Caden Fagan here a little bit. I just think Fagan needs a year. I really do. I think long-term Fagan might be more likely to be a load back there, but I thought Jordan Anderson's spring was really good. And to see him today at practice as the number 3 back in the rotation gives me a little bit more confidence that, yes, Jordan Anderson should get some reps at some point.
Can we just point out that, like, the way that the running back room is right now, Illinois does not get a ton of 4-stars on the recruiting trail. And the way this running back room is they get one who's physically quite an impressive young man, and Caden Fagan. It's like, not yet. Not yet on you. That is the most running back.
Khalil Valentine will be the same thing a year from now. It's like, well, we got Josh McCray, Reggie Love, Aiden Lawfrey, Caden
Some
Fagan.
of that might depend on if Aiden Lawfrey can sit, because, like, otherwise Khalil Valentine's really fast.
Yeah.
So it's a conversation for another day, but the point being, like, that is a very Brett Bielema running back room thing where it's like 4-star in-state, built like an adult. Hang tight. We'll get to you. That is the most Brett Bielema running back room thing ever.
The good news about that, you can play 3 of them, right? You can feed 3 of them if they're good enough. So, and I think this year, I do think they're deep enough to do that. All right, reasonable expectations, Joey. What are your expectations for this group?
Feels weird that all my expectations are going to be middle of the Big Ten. I think it's reasonable to think you're going to get Chase Brown yardage production combined. I think you and ideally would like north of that. You would probably like to be in that 1,800 yard neighborhood if you can. Now, you go back to the quarterback conversation we had. Now you're talking a pretty good offense if you're in that mix.
Well, Illinois ran for 2,161 yards, 4 yards per carry, 18 touchdowns last year. 166 per game is probably the number we should be talking about. Here's my hot take. I think they're top 5 in the Big Ten in rushing this year. I think they're better overall. I think they have more rushing touchdowns. I think they have more rushing yards per game just because they're going to be deeper. They're not relying on one guy. I think the passing game can open up a little bit. I think their yards per attempt can go up a little bit. Like I think Illinois has to be great rushing the ball this year. Again, they were middle of the pack last year. They had one great player who could break off some long runs, but I think they have to be more consistent running the ball this year. And behind Julian Pearl and Isaiah Adams, and I think Josh Kreutz will be solid. I think Zach Chrysler could be really good. I think this is going to be their identity still. Like we can talk about the passing attack, the play action's got to be better, but this is how they win games. So I think they're actually going to rush for more yards, maybe the 175, 180 range. And most importantly, they're going to run for more touchdowns. They had 18 last year. I think that's got to be closer to 25.
Yeah, that's what I was just pulling up the rushing touchdowns because it felt like that's the biggest thing that left a lot to be desired.
And can I mention Luke Altmaier can help here? Like Luke Altmaier's legs, if he can carry the ball 5 times a game, now I'm worried about that because he's a little skinnier. But if he can run the ball and be a threat, that opens up potentially some running lanes for these guys too. And Tommy DeVito at the end of last year, you knew he wasn't going to run for it with that ankle injury.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's a dynamic that I'm wondering how much Barry Lunny dives into and how he dives into it as well. I mean, I'm sure you're going to call some plays for him to use his feet, and it's not going to be all ad lib. So that's a fascinating wrinkle to put into this conversation. But yeah, I'm not worried about them replacing Chase Brown's yardage production. I think that's
crazy because both of us. It sounds crazy, like it was saying it right because he was so good. But I just think overall as a rushing attack, I think they're going to be better. I do because they have more options there. Are we crazy here for saying that?
I mean, probably, Jeremy, but it's 2 weeks into training camp.
You gotta have some kind of take, right?
Do we? So, I mean, so you split up the carries, but what's your yardage split? Like, what's an ideal yardage split? Let's go the top 2 and then 3. Like, we don't need to get much further than that, probably.
If McCray and or Love stayed healthy for the entire season, I think one of those is going over 1,000.
You got to, right? Like, there's too much history to suggest there's not going to be a 1,000-yard guy.
What Bielema does. And then, I mean, because remember, Chase Brown did that with 180 carries 2 years ago. And Josh McCray had, 500, and he had some health issues that year. I would go with one guy getting over 1,000, the other guy getting over 650, and another guy getting about 200. And then I think Altmaier, it's weird with the rushing stats. Please take out quarterback stats of sacks of rushing stats. I can't stand that in college football. But I think Altmaier will gain 300 yards on the ground.
Jeremy Werner.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh my
Dude, they love his legs. They love him. I haven't looked at his legs personally, but they like his ability to run.
I can't believe you haven't. That's your next step. That availability. Let's get some calf inspections on this. That's quite the rushing.
I think they're going to be really good running the ball. I didn't know that was a hot take with Brett Beal. I like that they have more options. It's as great as Chase Brown was. And I keep repeating that, but they got more options.
It does feel weird saying all this
because of the sacks, Altmaier ends up with like 10 rushing yards, but the gain part I think will be about.
It feels really weird saying all this, almost like we're trying to be like Chase Brown. Like it feels a little bit, and it's not the same. I know it's not the same, but it feels a little bit like when Kofi left, and it's like this is good. I know it's not, but it just feels weird to be like Chase Brown's gone. Like it's a very weird feeling. It's not the same, but the feeling is still very like.
The take there, Joey, would be more of Tommy DeVito's gone, but they'll be better at quarterback. I'm not there. I'm not
No.
there. We talked about that earlier. Or, yeah, Devin Witherspoon and Sidney Brown and Quan Martin might be gone.
Forget about him.
They're still going to have a top 10 secondary in college football. No, I'm not. I'm not going to say that. But with their running backs, these guys have a little bit of proven, and I think they have talent, and they have a good offensive line in front of them. It's what Brett Bielema does, so I got confidence. And it's what Barry Lundy does, really. Sincere McCormick was a good back, but I think these guys, Josh McCray, Reggie Love, are they less talented than Sincere McCormick? I mean, Sincere's really good, but I can see those guys having good college careers here.
Yeah, and to be honest, like this conversation wouldn't feel as weird, I don't think, if Josh McCray was healthy last year and like you could see where the rushing totals were as a team with his output in there, because I think it would have been, it would have been a lot better. That's not a hot take either.
Touchdowns, especially, I think would have been way up.
Man, that was probably when Chase Brown was putting up all those yards, like the Heisman talk kind of went from a whisper. And I think everybody realistically knew it wasn't going to happen. But like there was like in that middle part of the season, there was quite a lot of noise around Chase Brown, whether it be Heisman or Doak Walker or whatever. The touchdowns were the thing that like didn't jump off the screen, and that probably kept that conversation a little quieter than it would have been if he had a few more.
I still think running back is their best skill position on the team. I have the most confidence in this skill position group than any other group on the team.
Yeah, but I reserve the right to change that by October 1st when I see a little bit of the wide receivers, because I really, really like what's going on there.
That's a good tease for the next group we'll be talking about. Wide receivers and tight ends coming up. Joey Wagner, this was fun, man. This is going to be fun to go through all of these. Looking forward to these. And obviously 2 sexy positions here. People know me, the O-Line, D-Line podcast, going to be a banger.
I cannot believe you didn't start with that. Someone is disappointed. 18-year-old Jeremy Renner is disappointed that you continue to overlook the offensive line.
Listen, I have my preferences of what should be first to talk about, but I know the metrics, I know the analytics, I know what the people want. It's the quarterbacks and running backs, Joey.
Get your sabermetrics out of here, Jeremy. You got to play with your heart, man. All right?
It'll be coming up soon. Joey Wagner, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Illini Inquirer podcast or watching on our YouTube channel. Give us a follow, rating, review wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube. Hit the like button as you get out of here. Subscribe to us. Hit the notifications bell as well. Everybody have a great day. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.